Hello everybody and welcome to the CEM top-up homework review video for week 6, and this is for the verbal reasoning. So it's going to be this homework here, and in this verbal reasoning homework we're going to be going through assessment test 1 from the CGP CEM book. Now just very quickly, here is a brief summary of the answers. So if you want to have a look at this quick answer section here, please feel free. Again, you can just pause the video and just speedily mark your way through. If, however, you'd rather go through more slowly, that's what we're going to do now. So obviously, here's the comprehension. Make sure that you've read it through carefully. Again, I'm going to assume for the purpose of this video that you've gone through and you've answered everything. So we're going to jump straight into the questions. But again, just some quick tips. I would be just trying to, as I read through, highlight, keep an eye out for the 5 W's, the who, what, when, where, whys, and any other key information that's likely to have questions asked about it. So, first question, number 1, which word best describes how Daniel feels at the start of the passage? The answer is D. At the start of the passage, he is anxious about starting at the new school. Number 2, which of the statements is true? The answer is D. Daniel wear glasses, because it refers in the text to his thick spectacles, or thick lenses of his spectacles, and spectacles are glasses. That's what it means. Number 3, which word best describes what Daniel's father looks like? And he is, I believe, described as towering in the passage, and towering like a tower is a word for tall. So the answer to number 3 is B, tall. Number 4, Daniel tells Rachel that his name is Dennis at first. Why does he do this? And then the reason he says his wrong name is because he's nervous. So if you look here, the answer is C. So he's caught off guard that this pretty girl is talking to him. So because he's then nervous, he sort of stutters and says the wrong name. Very funny. Number 5. How does Daniel think the other pupils will treat him? And up in the passage it says that he would never hear the end of it from his classmates, and he feels that they're going to be unkind and unfriendly. So in this case it's A. He's never going to hear the end of it. Spectacles and glasses and everything else. So unkind and unfriendly. That's partly again why he's nervous. Number 6. How do you think Rachel's brother Tom knows what the headmaster is like? And in the text it says he's in the year above, and the year above of course means he's at the same school. So in this case the answer is D. He already goes to school in the year above. So if one was in year 7, he would be in year 8, for example. Number 7. How do you think Daniel feels at the end of the passage? At the end of the passage it says Daniel thought secondary school might not be so bad. So in that case he is relieved. He thought it was going to be bad, and it's not as bad as he thought it was going to be. So he's relieved. He's certainly feeling a bit happier. Number 8. Which of the following facts is given in the passage? Well, we know in this case that his dad is Mr. Graham. So of course that means he is Daniel Graham. So we learn his surname. So a bit of a sort of a trick question there. But if it's Mr. Graham is the dad, then you know that it's Daniel Graham is his full name. Number 9. What is meant by the word address on line 5? And in this case, an address, or to address people, is to talk to them, to give a speech. So if you address a class, you talk to the class. So in this case, I think our best answer is a speech. Formal speech in this case. Number 10. What is meant by the word severe? If you're very severe, you're very strict. There'd be severe repercussions for doing something wrong, a very strict teacher perhaps. Number 11, what is meant by the word simultaneously? In this case, simultaneously just means at the same time. So if you do 2 things simultaneously, you're doing them at the same time. So the common phrase, walking and chewing gum. Number 12, why do you think Rachel doesn't feel nervous about starting a new school? And it's because Rachel's older brother already goes there, so I suspect she's already talked about it. So I guess here she knows what to expect. She's been able to speak to someone who knows what's happening. Number 13. Daniel thinks that he will never hear the end of it. And here the end of what does it, in this case, I think it means that people will keep reminding over and over that he's the headmaster's son. So never hear the end of it means it'll keep coming up. He'll, in this case, they'll keep teasing him, but constantly. Number 14. Rakestraw says his bark is worse than his bite. Quite a common phrase. In this case, it means that the noise it makes is the scary part, nothing else. So in this case, probably that the headmaster is not as scary as he seems, because the headmaster might shout, but he won't actually punish anyone. So not quite as scary as he seems. Right, so that's the first 14. I believe that's all of the comprehension questions. So now we're going to look at this. We enjoy these. Again, I tend to find with these questions people you either know the answers or not, so we'll just whiz through them. So over 4,500 years ago, the ancient Egyptians began building pyramids. The pharaohs, I think that's probably going to be intended the pyramids to be impressive monuments, and then as eternal resting places to safeguarding their souls. Wealthy Egyptians would fill their tombs with things they would need in the afterlife. They believed that before their souls were granted eternal life, that their actions on earth would be judged rigorously. This judgment would happen in the underworld, where the deceased person's heart would be weighed against the feather of the goddess Mat. Ma'at, perhaps, not sure. If the heart was heavier than the feather, it would be deemed unworthy, and the person would not enter the afterlife. So they might be enjoy, but no, they are enter the afterlife. Shoja's step pyramid was one of the first of these tombs. It could be finest, but no, first of these tombs. It is known as a step pyramid because it was built as a series of 6 successively something squares. What do we think? Smaller, that makes sense? Yes, a series of successively smaller squares. So it's that sort of pattern of each one coming in. The Mayan pyramids often look like that, I think. There you go. So smaller squares on top of one another. His burial chamber is hidden underground and sealed with a stone weighing 3.5 tons. But this did not something the grave robbers deter, that means put off. This did not deter the grave robbers when the tomb was excavated. Almost nothing was left inside, which is very sad because it would have been nice to have had some amazing history. Right, on now to similar in meaning. So in this case, mark the word outside the brackets that's similar to both. You have to find a word here and here. Often you end up having homophones here, where one of these words will mean 2 different things, one belonging to the first group, one belonging to the second. In this case, point direct, like an arrow, you're aiming, and your purpose and intention is your aim. So to aim an arrow or your personal goal are both aim. 36, trench and drain, abandon and dump. So to ditch someone is to leave them, but also a ditch. It could be like where water flows as a drain. It's a ditch. 37, talent, ability, present and offering. So a talent is a gift and a present is a gift. Path and a route, hunt and pursue. So you could walk along a country track or you could track someone down. 39, a law or code, like a rule, and a lead and a rein, to rule. So if you rule someone, you're in charge, and also don't break the rules. It's like the laws. 40, to assess and grade, to scratch and dent. So if you mark something, you give it a score out of 10, or if you were to make a mark on the wall, you might scratch it or dent it. So I think 40 is mark. 41, a people or a tribe. It's like a race of people, and also running a sprinting race. So a race of people, but also a running race. 42, late and overdue. I don't know what it means. And then after and following. So if you're behind someone, you're following. And if you're behind on your payments, that's a hard one. Better behind, detained, not really. Next, I think it's behind, and I think that's because you'll often be, if you're late on a payment, so a bill, for example, you might say you're behind on your payments. It means you're late. You owe someone something. 43, stone and a boulder, and swing and sway. Well, a stone is to rock, but also you might rock a by baby, rock something in a pram. So definitely rock that one. 44, to bolt, to fasten, and a ringlet and a curl. Well, you might have a lock of hair, but you might also lock a doorway, for example. So lock is the answer for that one, I believe. Right, then for these, again, we're doing now opposites, antonyms. I always like with these, just to make sure you underline those keywords, you don't get them the wrong way around. So in this case, we're looking for antonyms. So there's a few opposites to sweet. It's not sweet and sour. So in this case, probably bitter. B-I-T-T-E-R. Bitter. That bitter taste. 46. Poor, and probably this looks like wealthy to me. Wealthy. Dry and moist. Bright and shady. So you're in the bright sunlight or you're in the shade. Temporary and permanent. Permanent. Slow and speedy. Joy and woe. Woe betide someone means, or woe is me means sadness is me, so woe is sadness. Rare and common. So if something is common, it happens frequently. If it's rare, it doesn't happen very often. 53, uninterested. If you're not interested, you don't care. So if you're eager, you do care. You're really keen for something. E-A-G-E-R, eager. And then finally, if you're a professional at something, it means you do it for a job. If you're an amateur, you're a beginner. Or more importantly, perhaps you don't get paid for it. Professional means it's a job, and amateur is a beginner or someone who does it only as a hobby. Right, those are the words. On to the last section then. So in this case, we're finding the same or nearly the same as the word on the left. So this is really just finding the most similar word. So again, this is similar synonyms. So 55, if you are brave, you are fearless, I guess is best. I think actually it's more that if you're brave, you overcome your fear. Actually, I prefer that as a definition, but that's the closest there. 56, if you guess something, you estimate it. You make an estimated, or an educated guess would be an estimate. Worth of something is its value. So the value of something is how much it's worth. To study something is to learn something. So I think if you're the one studying, you're the one doing the learning. So teaching could help, but I think learn is better. To assist someone means to help, and so does aid. So I think assist and aid are the synonyms there. If you're glad, you are comforted, sort of, yes, but pleased. I'm really glad to see you. I'm really pleased to see you. So I think pleased is the closest. 61, a shovel is how you'd excavate something. And I think actually in this case, a scoop is a name for a type of shovel that normally has a particularly big sort of head area. So if you have a shovel that's made for, I've seen really big shovels for moving snow. I think they're called scoops, where you've got, the really big, or leaves, light things where you can really scoop up a lot of things at once. So shovel and scoop are the synonyms. 62, ring. So you might have a metal ring and you might have a metal band, both meaning like a loop. Something is bendy, it's flexible. Easily bent means flexible. If something is pulled tight, it's pulled taut. So for example, if I had a piece of string that was looping like this, and I pulled it tight, it would look like this. So that is a taut piece of string. And then I would use just words like lax for this one. So that's lax, and this is taut or tight, because you're pulling the string in that direction. So the loop kind of moves up. Good words, those, taut and tight. 65. You had a scare, you've had a shock. So shock someone, to scare them. If you shrink someone, So if you shrink someone, they would become miniature, but you can't use the word miniature like you can shrink. You can't say I miniatured someone, but you could say I shrunk someone. So I think to shrink something down might actually be simplify. It's closer. Because if you simplify something, let's say you had a big long piece of maths and you simplified it, you make it smaller. So I think actually simplify is better than miniature. If it was miniaturize, then maybe, but no, I think currently simplify is a slightly better word. Although miniature is close. 67, to soak someone and to drench them. So you're soaked in water, you're drenched in water. And then finally, a blunt object would be one that you could sort of bash things with. But if someone is very blunt, they are quite, the word we would use is curt. So that means they're very to the point and perhaps a little rude potentially. It's not normally the intent if you're blunt. It's just they're very untalkative and just kind of a grunted answer would be blunt or curt. And again, that can often come across as a little bit rude. Right, guys, I believe that is the end of the test. So thank you so much for watching along with me. I hope you found that useful. And of course, there'll be a video going through the non-verbal for you to keep an eye out as well. Thanks for watching, everybody.